Hey, I'm working on putting a new alternator into my 64 Mercury. Now, the reason I need to do that is because I've added fuel injection, which has an electric fuel pump, and it has an electric fan. And if I have the lights on or I'm doing anything else, the voltage just slowly drops down as I'm at an idle until the fuel injection doesn't want to work anymore. So that's a problem, and I tried replacing it with a better 1G alternator, Ford's first generation alternator, which the 64 Mercury's had. Now, the nice thing is, Ford somehow kept this all simple over the years. The new 3G, you gotta get the new pulley on, but the mounts are the same, and even the wire colors are the same. Yellow is going to be the reference for battery voltage. The green with red stripe, that goes to the ammeter gauge and into the dash. And then this white just comes out of here and goes back into the alternator as the field, I believe. It doesn't really matter. It comes out of here, goes in here. It's hard to screw that up. Back on the car, we're gonna be getting rid of a few things. The old alternator had 4 wires going to it. Now, this is going to just bridge over to the battery terminal of the alternator, the new one. Just a short little connection there. So we can get rid of the yellow wire that connects down currently onto this alternator, and also the white wire that goes over to the regulator, and the black with red stripe wire that goes to ground. We don't need that ground reference anymore. It's going to go through the body of the alternator. Now, what I thought was incredible, so back in 64, this alternator, by the way, I pulled out of a U-pull junkyard out of a, this one came out of a Mustang, I think a 94, 95, 3.8 liter. There's a lot of cross references, Cougars, Thunderbirds, 3.8s, 5.0s, sort of in that 94 to, I think up to like 96 range or further. Anyway, there's a lot of options available. They all kind of look the same. But if you look down here, that's a green wire with red stripe. That's what Ford used back in 1964, and it's still the same. So the one wire I need to add, but I'm gonna run a new wire, this yellow wire, because I can't find a green with red stripe wire. And that's gonna go down under the alternator where the other regulator to alternator wires go. There's some clips there and everything. I'll run it right with those out of the way. You won't really see it unless you try to look under the radiator. So that's a one new wire. It's gonna go from green and red to yellow, and then back to the green and red over here. That'll keep my ammeter working. Besides that, I'm hooking the big black with yellow stripe up to battery, this yellow wire, and then a new heavy 4-gauge wire from this terminal on the starter solenoid. And that's going to the incoming from the battery. It's gonna go on here. Now mine's a convertible, so it has this breaker for the convertible wiring. That's gonna go to a 175 amp mega fuse that I also pulled out of the junkyard from, I think, a 96 F-150 had it in there. And then into the battery terminal as well. So the battery terminal at the alternator is going to be a bit busy. The yellow wire, the new heavy 4-gauge wire coming from the solenoid, and, oh, the black plus yellow wire. The black wire with a yellow stripe. That goes and powers up some things in the passenger compartment. So to catch back up with what we're doing here to make it a little more clear, yellow wire coming out of the regulator, that goes to the battery. That's going to give this a voltage reference of where the car's at. Now, some diagrams show this going up to the starter solenoid, which is the other end of this cable. It's terminating here. There shouldn't be a voltage difference. This is easier. The green wire. Now, I said I was going to go to a yellow wire. It was a little heavier gauge than it needed to be, considering this is like 16 gauge. So I went to the smaller 14 gauge wire. It's still bigger. Limit the voltage drop because it has to go all the way across the car. Made a soldered heat shrink connection there. So this I will run underneath the radiator and over to the green red wire over by the regulator as it goes from the regulator to the firewall. Okay, now with the alternator installed, here's what's going on under the hood. So I have a 175 amp mega fuse, and from this terminal we're going down to the alternator, and this terminal, what we have going on is I used to have this yellow wire and the battery wire up here at the starter solenoid, and the diagrams say to put this wire, the battery wire up here. I'm just doing it down here because this is a longer stud and I was kind of running out of room up here to do that. I also had this yellow wire here that powers the fan, and that's fused back over this way, but that was on here too. So what I was able to do, since I had all this, is I went ahead and put the fan wire, the positive battery cable, and the cable that runs up to the solenoid down here. It'll keep them out of the way. This thing will cover up nicely. Here's the alternator with the pulley changed. The old pulley fits perfectly on the shaft. The only thing was it sat down too far. The other pulley was spaced up a little bit further off the case. So I just got a 5/8 flat washer, which was a little too small. So I just took and just barely had to grind it open a little bit on the inside, and it fit down perfectly, spins nice. And the other thing is the new alternators, they bolt down solid, and then the belt is held with tension. You don't tension it with the moving the alternator. So I took a 7/16 20 tap through here since there were no threads in it, and now we'll be able to tighten the belt with just a wrench instead of having to try to tighten a nut and a bolt at the same time while holding this tight. So that was really the only way I could figure I'd be capable of doing that. So alternator's all ready to go, car's all ready to go, and we'll shove it in there. So there it is, one installed 3G alternator. See, with the fan on there, it looks not quite like the original. The fan's internal on these, so you can tell the difference, but tucked down in there, you really don't see it. And the big difference is the results. I went from dropping below 12 volts with just the electric fan and fuel pump, the necessities running at idle. Now with this new 3G alternator in there at idle, I had the lights on, the blower fan on, the radio, and the electric fan, everything, and it was holding 13.8 volts. Turn everything off and it goes to 13.8 volts. So it's just running steady and happy.